So let's welcome to our hangout for Google TV. Let's shoot. So I'll start with Will. We know that he's going to at least have technical questions. Or not. I can move on.
I try to put marketing questions in my list today.
Okay, that's cool.
Let me get to your post.
Okay, get reminded. I scroll down there too. Let's see. You asked app review hangout.
Oh yeah, that was just me trying to promote myself. We were thinking with Google TV Friends about doing an app review hangout type of thing.
Okay.
For developers who wanted to just talk about their app, kind of pattern after there's an Android developer one that I saw. It started last Friday. It looks pretty cool, and it would be fun to do one specifically for Google TV. So. That was just me wondering if anyone would be interested to talk to myself, and the Google TV, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we should theme one of these hangouts as an app review.
Yeah, because we do app reviews pretty regularly too, so we could give some guidance and some help.
Cool.
And maybe that's what Christian could do next week while I'm away.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Okay, let's see. And I see Chris on there, so he could probably have similar stuff. And I moved my cursor. Cool. All right. Then I'm going to go to the next person. Magnus, you have a question? Or not? Okay. Chris, do you have any questions?
Just one. It's pretty much back to the market issues again. Two things. One is still the downloading of the apps or the updating of the apps. It just doesn't work. And the other one is you can't leave a review of an app from the Google TV. At least I can't using the Logitech review. It just doesn't work.
Does it error out or?
No, I can't enter anything into the boxes, and then when I do, it's all capitals. And if I mess up, there's no way to backspace, delete the text. So it's just there, and I either have to cancel, and if I submit it, it's just going to look all kind of messed up. But that may just be on my device. So I have to go back onto the laptop, go into the market, leave a review that way. I can't do it through the TV.
Okay. We know people are doing reviews. You're welcome to join us, AK. Yes, come on in. Okay.
So I'll take a look. I don't think we've received a bug report like that before, but yeah, see if we can get it.
You're welcome to join us. Yeah, and you wouldn't have a Sony box or just a review?
Just the review.
Okay. Cool. All right. Then we'll take a look. That's a problem in the market that you can't leave reviews on a review. Okay. So I'll move on to Dustin.
Okay. My question was in regards to the in-app billing, and I'd like to switch from the developer account on the review over to the test account that we've set up, but I don't see an easy way of doing that without factory resetting the device.
Can't you just add another account and use that for your market account? You go into settings and accounts and add account?
And then in market, you
Honestly,
can
I haven't tried,
switch the primary account.
Yeah, that would be how you do it.
Okay, Great, thanks.
Okay, cool.
Easy.
Yeah. Brian, you're next. Do you have a question? Okay. You can type it into the chat window, too. And Brad had a couple points and questions.
Hey, Les, Brad. Go Gets. Sorry, it's kind of dark, but I guess my first question was, obviously at some point we're going to see whatever you want to call it, fragmentation or units left behind. Is that going to happen with the review on 3.2, or is that going to get updated? I know you can't tell us when, and I know there's politics and other things involved in that, but is it going to see the HLS capability
Yes.
Sony's have now?
Yeah, the reviews will see HLS.
Okay. I mean, so they're going to get the full 3.2 update?
Yes.
Okay. So that's, obviously that's, that brings some functionality that I know a lot of review users will find useful, obviously with, for streaming video and things, that'll bring a lot of capability.
Oh, yeah.
So that's pretty important.
Get that.
I had another question, and I don't remember what it is now. It's been a couple
Okay,
days.
that's cool. We'll come back.
But that's really great. I appreciate you letting us know that will get updated.
Yeah.
Have you mentioned the SDK level 12, 13?
Oh, I had asked something about, I'm sorry, it was about the NDK.
I have at times. Yes, sure. There's no NDK for now and not for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Is there anything else you are concerned about the NDK about?
Well, I guess my question was that it appeared that OnLive may have used some kind of NDK functionality to write their app, and I could be wrong, is what I said.
There are some people who have figured out how to get native code on Google TV, and they are in market. It is not compatible with anything. And there's no guarantees, and it will break soon.
Okay. As with any undocumented APIs, we recommend you don't use them, and we may change those at any point. So your apps may break.
No,
That's understood.
They'll break. We actually know that as a fact.
Yeah, I guess the only reason I asked, Les, is because I know that sometimes some developers get early access to things because they are big-time developers like OnLive is, and I know that there's a partnership with OnLive bringing the gaming to Google TV. So I just was wondering if they got a preview view of an NDK and it was coming sooner, because I know that I've listened to every Hangout and you have said multiple times, no NDK right now, no NDK right now, but it just looked like they were utilizing some native code. So.
Thinking me now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, there is no seeding of an NDK at this point because we can't have an NDK, and I can't really explain it too much today.
That's fair.
Okay, I'm going to move as soon as I find my cursor to a mirror. Do you have a question? Or you can just type it into the chat window if you'd like. I'm going to move on to Alexander, and then I'll come back.
Hey.
Hi.
I was wondering, I posted my question up on your original post ages ago. What do you think the legitimacy of using console-style controllers or using, PS3 or Xbox 360 controllers with Google TV will be in the future? Do you think that's something we should look at for games in particular?
So you mean the controllers?
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Just everyone remember to mute your mics when you're not on, because we're hearing some feedback somewhere. Christian, do you have an idea?
Right now, the controllers out there are the ones that are out there. for the new generation TVs that were shown at CES, the OEMs are experimenting with new generation of remote controls. They are not final yet, and we haven't really seen anything really reliable there. But I think what's possible is people can plug in USB controllers. We've experimented a little bit with basically plugging in USB game console controllers. It's okay. It's workable. The USB drivers will recognize it, but the challenge is that the challenge is that your users may or may not have the same game controllers that you have, and it gets. I want to say you limit your audience a little bit. So I would say at this point, the best is just rely on the controllers that come with the devices, with the Review or the Sony. Or another alternative is we would love to see more apps which actually, for example, the phones as remote controls. As you know, but we've also seen some developers that have successfully written apps that turn the phone into a remote control, and then you can use gyros and all kinds of stuff with it.
Okay. I'm going to go on to Will's question. I muted Alexander just because we were picking up stuff. So Will was asking about in-app billing.
Okay. I'm working on in-app billing right now today with my app, and I'm not stuck really. But my question is, I have it basically working where I can charge myself, and I can see the charge in the console. So that's working. But my idea then is to just write to like a flag in a shared preference to say that this purchase was made, and then rely on that flag within my app to behave differently based on a purchase situation. So that is that okay to use? Is that what I should be using to do that? Could somehow they could change? Could somehow you could change the shared preferences? You know, hack it somehow to find that flag and say I paid. That's my first question, and then.
Well, you can think of it as a cache. So
right.
If the flag is there, you know, again, people could try to defeat you by. They could try to defeat that, but you can think of it as a flash, and if it's not there, rather than assume that it's not paid, you might want to request of the license verification library.
Right. Yes.
Has somebody and see there's two kinds of in-app billing. There are permanent licenses, which is probably what you're going to want to use. And there's also temporary licenses, which is for like game components that get reused.
I gotcha. Okay.
That are expendable. And so you use the flag to begin with just for performance reasons, which actually probably isn't that significant on a TV. And then you use the license verification library.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm just sort of getting into it today. So that was, I wasn't as particularly stuck, but I want to throw a technical question out there. So.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Does anybody have a question? We've also been joined. We have AK, who's one of our project managers, and Vincent, who founded the Google TV project. Is that a good introduction?
We can give.
Hi,
Let's give
I'm
Vincent.
Vincent. That's okay.
AK on camera.
Oh, we don't mind hiding.
Yeah.
That's all right. Don't worry.
I'm AK. I'm hiding on the side here.
Yeah. So if you've got any, AK is really the one. Actually, both of them are good ones to talk about what you want with. You know, features you'd like, not features that are coming, but so if you have any of those. And,
Hey, Wes?
Yes.
Real quick, in the past you had mentioned that you were going to check into seeing if the market could be updated outside a firmware update. Obviously, we all know the market has a bunch of issues. Were you able to find that out and I know that you said there's a lot of people working on getting them.
I think before we talk about the market, I think market could be potentially updated outside of the OTA, but what kind of issues do you have with market right now that we should fix?
I think a lot of us feel that there's probably some UI issues, but also it doesn't show that installed apps. A lot of times it has trouble updating apps. A lot of times, let's see, it doesn't show installed apps, has issue updating apps. I know that I personally had some issues with paid failures just failing out. So I just think that market's got some issues that probably need to be rethought. And I thought that Les had mentioned that you guys were looking, that there was people working on that.
We're actively fixing bugs in those areas. Also, you would likely see an update, whether through an OTA or through other means. You would see an update, but I can't talk about timelines.
Yep, no, understood that you can't talk about timelines.
What he was asking, though, is can market be done through other means besides an OTA?
It could potentially be updated outside of OTA, as it is done on phones as well.
Yeah. Right. That's good because I hate to see, especially the Logitech side of the house. Obviously, those guys are a little slower with their OTAs than other people. I hate to see a market delay.
At the end of the day, the question is, are we going to keep updating market?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other live questions, or I can start reading some? Amir is back.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so my question comes with the arrival of the Armada 1500 Google TVs that are hitting the market, and the fact that it's just the ARM GPU or CPU that's coming out. My question comes into the the early adopters who had purchased the reviews and the Sony line of devices. Are we going to be left out when if y'all do decide to enable native code? Because I heard y'all mention just recently that native code will break. Of course, it's going to break because you're going to be on a different architecture. But I'm assuming the reason y'all are going to the other architecture is so that you can enable that native code and expand the marketplace to a wider, bring in a wider marketplace to the TVs. Because right now it's kind of, being hurt by the fact that the developers aren't really siding y'all's way right now.
Some of this, I can take this. Some of this is dependent on the OEMs, as you've sort of seen in the phone ecosystem. That we would want most of these devices to be updated, but a lot of it is dependent on OEMs. So it's difficult for us to predict how different devices would get updated.
Well, no, it's not really updating because it seems like the Google TV platform is moving to an ARM chips or architecture. So my main question is, do you leave the early adopters out in the dust when this new line of Google TV devices come out? Because we're all going to be on x86. We may get a lack of updates. We may get poor market support if you do choose to enable native code. Just along those lines. It's not really anything that you could really change other than having a some type of low-level bytecode emulator. But I was just looking for some hope.
We have this bytecode emulator. We call it a Dalvik virtual machine.
Right.
It works really well.
The question is, so
I'm talking about native code.
In general, as we ship new devices on the market, what about the earlier generation devices, right?
Right. Right.
So, on our end, obviously, what we want to do is we want to keep those devices alive as long as we can.
Right.
We have two dependencies. We have one dependency on Intel, or whoever builds the chipset.
Right.
And we have another dependency is on, in this particular case, Sony and Logitech.
Right.
And so we need support, depending on what we do, we need support from either one of them, which would be Logitech or Sony, or in some cases both Logitech, Sony, and Intel to continue to support the platform.
Yeah, I just, I see everything moving to ARM, and it seems like a platform decision as opposed to a, OEM decision. Because, I don't see any more x86 second-generation Google TVs. It seems like that's almost dead.
It's not our migration to, I mean, the fact that the new generation devices are ARM-based, I don't think you should read it as a platform decision. As a matter of fact, it's really, we were actually guided by the OEMs who actually built those, who were building those second generation devices, and they're the ones who made the decision in terms of which chipset they're using. And it's the guys who use the chipset that decided which CPU they're using. That's really how it happened. And as Christian pointed out, I mean, we have, you should think of Android. Android is a virtual machine. It has a bytecode interpreter, precisely so that we can stay away from those CPU dependencies.
But am I or am I not correct that that's only for Java code? The native code still has to be compiled to the architecture.
That's partially correct. So, I mean, we really recommend using Android right now and using the Java code in Android, of course. But if you want really high performance in your application, I would really like you to take a look at RenderScript. It's very close to C code. It's very efficient, and it gets executed directly on the graphics hardware. So if you do any visual effects or anything in games, we've seen a lot of good performance actually in RenderScript. For, I want to say, business logic type applications, things that you really do more like a UI and input-output operations, Dalvik is really an excellent choice. It makes it very easy to have compelling user interfaces and compelling apps. I know there is a lot of people who have legacy code and who want to use basically native Intel or ARM compiled libraries.
Right.
That's one of the areas we are aware of, but unfortunately there is really not much as we can do. And as Vincent pointed out, the consumer electronics market is really very heavily driven by the OEMs. If they make a chipset decision based on their needs and requirements, that was one of the reasons why Android was invented, so to speak, is really to enable developers to create applications across a broad range of different consumer electronic devices.
Well, that's very fair, and I do understand that ARM chips are generally cheaper than anything Intel puts out. So I do understand, the cost aspect that we all saw with the price drop of the Review and the Sony devices. That y'all have to stay competitive, which means going to those ARM chips. I have another question that's not related to that, but it is a time frame question. You said you didn't want those?
Well, ask it, and I'll tell you if we can't do it.
Okay, that's fair. Really, I was just looking to see if there's progress or really if there's consideration on seeing extensions on the Google TV anytime soon.
You mean extensions? You mean
Chrome extensions? I'm sorry.
Chrome extensions.
Yes, sir.
No plan yet on those.
Okay.
By the way, you and I are the only two who have asked for that.
Well, I think that on the philosophical, from a philosophical point of view, I think we need to worry about consumers, right? So if we provide too many application frameworks, that also means that at the same time, integration is not going to be seamless. So that means that already today, for instance, I think we have one issue, which is you can create a web app, you can create an Android app. If you want to get to the web app, you go one way, the Android app the other way. We try to do a few things to make that more seamless, but it's still different, right? So if we create yet another application framework, which is or enable on the platform, which is Chrome extensions, which, by the way, competes also with Android widgets in a way, then for users it's going to be really, really confusing. All those, they'll get different experiences depending on what we chose, what you guys chose as the application environment. I mean, I already get confused. I mean, the other day I was looking for tuning radio, and I couldn't figure out why it was not on market. It's because, well, as a user, I didn't remember it was a web app. And why should I remember, right? So I think that, at the end of the day, we don't support Chrome extensions because it's work, frankly speaking. But even if it was not a lot of work, I think that we'd have to think hard before we enable yet another application framework.
You did mention, I heard Les mention that he was one of the only ones that had asked for it, but this probably won't make the content providers happy, but I am really just looking for AdBlock Plus on my Google TV, as when I visit sites, the performance of the Chrome browser is just really lacking. And I don't know if it's the box or anything else, but I feel like getting rid of some of these motion banners and video ads and whatnot would definitely help. And so
you'll see an improvement when you get the update.
The 3.2?
Yes.
Okay.
Chrome is a little bit zippier, but we understand what you're interested in. I'm going to move on to a couple written questions. Steve Whitney asks about input options for his apps on Google TV. It would be really helpful to know what the possibilities are in terms of input devices. Will we always have touchpads, arrow keys, alphanumeric keyboards, etc.? Will the keys always be arranged the same way? I'd like to assign keys in logical ways, layout-wise, that won't break future devices. Hi, Vincent. Aren't you glad you came?
Yeah. Well, don't do that.
Okay.
Don't assume too much. I think, input device for TVs is really not a science. I think at this stage it's really interesting when we look at user feedback. It's very polarized. Believe it or not, there are people who love the Logitech keyboard, and there are people who love the Sony keyboard, and there's a lot of people who hate both. And so, we made it clear that we're going to keep experimenting with device manufacturers about those input devices. So as that happens, going deep and making assumptions, in particular about locations of keys. And I understand why you would want to do that from a usability standpoint, but I think that at this stage, I think it'd be really, really premature to make that kind of optimization.
On that front, are we going to publish the our requirements documents that we give to OEMs so that Android publishes their requirements so that developers can know what
Generally, the
direction the plan.
Android requirements documentation really is for OEMs.
Right, but it's still published so that developers can look at it and figure out this is an area I can go into and where I can't. There are certainly stuff in ours that developers would find interesting.
So I'm not sure if we publish our requirements document or sort of our agreements with the OEM, but what we can do is we can publish something for developers on our developer page on where things are going. So as we have decisions made, we can put it on our developer page.
Okay. We'll take that offline and I'll come see you. All right. And anytime any of you have a question there, speak up. But I'm going to read from the various written questions for a little bit. Okay. There's a question about ESPN and ESPN3.
It's not really a developer question.
It's not really a developer question, and it's not really anything we can do. Let's see.
So maybe while you find another question, just dovetailing into the last user input device question, do we have any information that we want to share yet about international input devices? So I would assume QWERTY is very US-centric, so if Google TV launches in different regions, I would imagine that, for example, the basic keyboard layout of the QWERTY keyboard is also going to be adapted, right?
Yeah, but that'll have minor impact, and definitely that's not, should be transferred, well, yeah, so.
Should be, but if somebody relies for game input, that whatever the Z is in the
that's
corner.
a good point. They need to worry about that.
Yeah, that's why that was what that earlier question about format is, to figure out what they should do for games. And because we already have that, developers do one thing for the Sony controller and something else for the Logitech.
Well, I mean, but okay. So even more so to your point, I mean, definitely as far as the letter part of the keyboard, definitely there will be some impact depending on the locale. But as I said, in general, I think for the time being, the physical location of the mandatory keys on the keyboard is going to be something relatively fluid.
We have a question from Alexander Kolichev asking about, he'd like to be able to download the iOS remote app from outside the U.S. Currently it's region locked, and I sent you an email about that earlier.
We'll remove that. We'll remove that logic. Today, today Google TV devices are only available in US, so we thought that's all work, but I think we work on it.
And then Jeff Deskins asks about the issues of designing websites for Google TV versus apps.
So I think both are great approaches for getting content on TV. In general, if you want the discoverability and monetization features of Android Market, you should build Android applications so that users discover apps in one of two ways currently. There's the Spotlight section on Google TV, and there's Android Market. In general, Android Market is more familiar to users who are just approaching the TV, and is more. We found people go to Android Market first. So if you want an app to get as much visibility as possible, I'd recommend launching an Android app.
Yeah. So we also, if you already have a website, it's not difficult to adapt it to Google TV. We have two libraries for one extension to jQuery that will let you quickly add D-pad navigation to your website. And if you're interested, go to developers.google.com/TV/web.
It's also a little bit of trade-off, right? I mean, if all your expertise is in web and you only are doing web, it's probably easier for you to stay with web or the other way around than web. So you could probably, it's a little bit of a personal decision also in terms of where most of your investments are and what's easiest for you to get onto the platform.
So what about having your cake and eat it too, which is developing an Android app that's just a big web view?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of good Android applications that are a hybrid of the two. So they use WebView, embedded in an Android application, typically to build out their user interface. One great example of this is the Redux app. And then they delegate to Android framework for things like video playback. And it's very easy with the WebView to have callbacks that tie into Android and vice versa. So if you do have expertise in web development and already have a code base, you can still leverage the features of Android Market by building this sort of hybrid application.
Yeah, there are some tricks to WebView that make it challenging. The back button doesn't always behave well.
Yeah, I mean, it's things that you have to test. But if you already have the HTML site, then it goes a long way to building an app and launching it.
Okay, so Bill Broadley asks about, is Android and Google TV going to converge into a single platform? I doubt if anybody wants to take that, but I'll throw it out there.
I think let's stay away from any future questions.
Okay. Okay, Bradley. Actually, we covered Bradley's question about Android Market. Actually, Will's got some marketing questions. Do you want to ask those live?
Yeah, I will. First one is about and there's like once you make your app free, there's kind of no going back, and I'm wondering if that can be changed in the future. So maybe it could support like if you had a special over the weekend, maybe your app was specific to a holiday, you want to do something on that day to make it free, and then be able to go back and forth. That'd be something I'd be interested to know if that was going to be possible. I also have an idea for an app, but I think it has copyright issues, and I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how it works, but it has to do with video. And I can't say anything because I signed an NDA, but is there someone I could talk to there, or can you give me a resource that I could ask to say, is this illegal? Is this idea illegal? My question.
Well, we can't answer that way. We can give you some other non-legal advice.
Okay.
But we can't give you legal advice.
All right. I'm pretty ignorant on copyright law, so it'd be like.
This is John Blossom. I'm not a lawyer, but if you need somebody to bounce things off of, just drop me a line.
Okay, I appreciate it. That's cool. I gotta check it out with my partner, but I will be in contact with you. And I think the last one I really cared about was a guy reviewed my app recently, and he seemed to be in his review. He kind of like was talking about problems with his hardware, but he really took it out on the app, and he gave it a 1-star review. And there was basically it was my free version. There was no way I could help him or respond to him as far as I could tell. So I was hoping to be a way that I could sort of help the person who has a problem maybe in that way, and encourage him to don't rate me, rate the hardware.
Yeah.
Just some sort of.
It's good feedback. It's good feedback that both you and other people have. It's just general Android feedback on Android market. So we understand that developers want a way to respond to reviews. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah.
We will take it to the market team and get your feedback in there. So it gets.
How about the going back and forth between free and paid? Would that be something that'll be in there?
Being able to give a special, it certainly should be a feature of market, but that's really taking it to market team.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll give them that feedback as well.
All right, I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to go on to. Are there any other live questions? Okay, I'm going to go on to Yossi TV. Asked about send system logs checkbox, basically, and using the read logs permission, and wondering about it. Every time you ask for a permission, you should explain to your users why you want it. That's an Android best practices. And in the case of read logs, since it's possible that another app, not yours, might make the mistake of putting personal information in the log file, you really should encrypt it before you send it to you. But explain it to your users and ask them for permission. That they're granting that permission, ask it in a way that that permission is separate and you bring it out. And your users will like you better. And let them decline and still run your app. Christian?
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of read logs, but I agree with your answer. I mean, if the app really requires it, there better be a good reason for it, and explaining it to the user makes sense.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Michael Seebeck asks a whole bunch of questions about that really come down to overlaying live television. And my rule is I'm happy to talk about that, but I'm not going to talk about it with you not here. So join the Hangout.
You probably covered this last week, but based on feedback, we did launch a public issue tracker and a place where you can go file feature requests. So I believe that feature request is already filed there. You can find it on developers.google.com/tv. It's on the left side, known issues, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
But we've heard this a lot from many different developers. But we're hoping that interested developers go to the issue tracker, and if the issue isn't there, file the issue. If the issue is there, star the issue. That way we can get a better idea of how many developers are interested in specific features, and of the list of features, which ones we should prioritize. It will also enable us to reach out back to developers who are interested. So when we do launch the feature, if we do launch the feature, we can let you know, or if we want some feedback from developers on how to build the feature, we can reach out to you and get that. So please do use that issue tracker. It is something we do take seriously when prioritizing features.
And a gentleman with an Islamic name, and I do not read Arabic, so I will...
Arabic name.
Arabic name, excuse me.
Yes. Are we going to have VPN for Google TV?
That's right. You can read it.
I can't read Arabic.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's really not something that's probably a big feature, but as Osama just mentioned,
I'm sure it may be something that an app developer can do.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Is that your name, Amir? Okay. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Plug for the Hangout. We've already had a question on that.
I do like that idea. I did hear very positive feedback about the Android.
What's the idea?
The Android did basically a featureability app review. Android DevRel team went through apps that they liked and they didn't like, and apps that were suggested to them, and then gave feedback based on what could make this app better, what could sort of take it to the finish line of being a featureable app. So that's something I think that we probably want to run one of these Hangouts, and certainly if you want to do it as a community thing, I encourage you guys to do it.
Okay, at South by Southwest, we're going to be talking about some experimental tools to access high-res YouTube videos. And should be a public invite. It's not an after party, and it is at there will be a whole section of Google stuff at Eisenhower's, and in that neighborhood there's like 4 buildings, restaurants that we're taking over, bars. There will be
I believe it does require South by Southwest pass, or
no,
it doesn't? Okay.
It's basically you come. The event that I'm talking about is an invite only, but there is a link to request an invite. But the bar is open.
Where's the link?
I don't know. It's the Google South by Southwest page.
Okay.
And then we are also going to have open office hours, 15 minutes. You can ask any developer relations person there any question you want for 15 minutes. Everything from technical questions, marketing questions, how do I get hired at Google? I want to join developer relations. We'll talk to you about it. Okay, any other live questions? I don't know about the League of Extraordinary Hackers event with Chris last year. Okay. Live question?
I have it's not technical, but did anybody invite Leon? It's very uncommon for him not to be here today.
Yeah, he's on my invite, so yeah, I was surprised he's not here today, but I know what he's working on, so I expect that he's busy working on that.
And then, as far as Will with his app there, you should just do what most of the other top developers do. They put a big note right on the description page of their app saying, if you have issues, contact you first before you leave a, bad review.
Yeah.
And,
yep.
I didn't see that on your description page. I just saw your Google Plus profile.
Yep, that's a really good idea. I'm going to update my my description very shortly. Actually, that's going to be part of it. So.
All right. I will give a plug for. I'm doing events in New York and in Toronto. There's a public event in Toronto, 2 public events in Toronto. If you're there, please sign up and come. Oh, have there been talks about devices with open bootloaders? There haven't been talks about these things. That's good. All right. Any other questions? Going. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll call it a day early.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Oh, I bet you I didn't do that. Okay. Well, I will share it. Let's see. Close.